Hey everybody, this is Matt from MasterSketchup.com, and today I'm going to show you a few tricks on how to use the scale tool. So this is the scale tool right here, and how you use it is you create a selection and you activate the scale tool. You can press S on your keyboard and you'll see this yellow box that surrounds the selection and all these green handles that pop up. And you can drag over any one of these green handles and see how they affect the selection. So you just click on it and this will scale uniformly. You know, when you grab from the corner, it'll scale uniformly. When you grab one of these dots that are in the center of the face, it'll scale across a certain axis. So you can play around with the different handles and see how they affect the shape of your selection. So one of the things that I use the scale tool for is, for instance, if I have some joists here, and I'm going to just make a copy of this joist. So I grab the move tool, click to start, and I'm going to drag it out here at an interval of 16 inches. Whoops, that was feet. So go inches, and we'll go 5 times, enter. And so I made all these copies, but you can see how all of these joists are overlapping this rim joist right here. So what I'll do is I'll just create a selection over all of these. Now I know some of you would argue that I should use a component for these items here. That way I can just change one of them and then all of them would change. But I know this, this might be a pet peeve of mine, but like with joists and studs, a lot of times I run myself into problems when I do that because I'll forget that it's a component and I'll change one and it'll end up changing all the others. So sometimes I use groups for joists and studs. So now that I have these selected, and by the way, when you drag from left to right like this, see how nothing is selecting right now? That's because when you do that sort of selection, you have to fully encompass whatever object you're trying to select. So in that case, I was wide enough where I could fully encompass those. But if you drag from the right to left, anything within that selection box will be selected. So left to right has to encompass everything. Right to left, you can just overlay a part of the object and the whole thing will be selected. So once you've selected it, I'll go ahead and tap S on my keyboard and you can see that now my scale bounding box is around the entire thing, and I'll go and grab this scale handle and I'll hold Control on my keyboard and you can see it scales evenly from the center, and then I'll just reference the edge of that joist there. So that's one way I use the scale tool about center, from the center, by holding down the Control key while I'm using the tool. Another trick you can use the scale tool for is drawing circles. A lot of times, well, when you're drawing a circle in SketchUp, you have to know the radius if you're trying to define a specific radius. So I can go 3 feet and type that in, and you can see the radius now is 3 feet. So if I measure from the center, I've got 3 feet. The diameter, of course, is 6 feet. So here's a trick you can do by using the scale tool. If you know the diameter of what you're trying to build. So for the circle, we'll go. We know it's a 6-foot circle that we want. So I'll type in 6 feet, enter, and you can see it's twice as big as the one over here. So then I'll just double click it, activate the scale tool, and I'll grab one of these corner handles, hold down the Control key, and scale it in to 0.5. And now when we measure it, you can see that it's a 6-foot circle. So with most tools in SketchUp, you can define an actual dimension that you want the tool to draw. But with the scale tool, you actually go by a ratio. So if I wanted to go half the size of this, I could come down and then type in 0.5, enter, and it'll be half the size of the original. Likewise, you can come up here and type in 2, enter, and it'll be twice the size. Most of the time, you don't really know what the proportion is. You want to actually scale it to a certain dimension. So like with everything in Sketchup, you can snap to guides and points in your model. So right now I have a 30-inch high cabinet, so I could create a guide at 36 inches and then grab the scale tool and then come up here and snap to that guide. But notice when I scaled this cabinet, the toe kick area scaled as well. And I don't really want that to happen because in cabinets the toe kick size is always the same. So I'm going to come back down here, and what I'm going to do is open up this group and then create a selection around just the object that I want to scale, or just the objects that I want to scale, and then scale it directly. So now you can see that the toe kick height remained the same because it's not part of the selection area, and the scale was referencing this fixed point down here. Like most things in SketchUp, when you scale a face, for instance, everything else that's connected to that face will resize as well. So you can make some pretty unique shapes by using the scale tool on only certain parts of an object to get the desired results. Now, when you scale a component or a group, one thing to keep in mind is the material will scale as well. So you can see how this material stretched as I stretched this component. Now, if you didn't want that, what you can do is open up the component so you can select the individual faces and then scale the individual faces, and you can see the material that's applied scrolls just like using the push-pull tool would do the same thing. Now the only problem is if you have multiple instances of that component, you can't exactly make those changes. If you only wanted to make that change to one cabinet, it's going to happen to all the others as well. So you can scale a component without having to open it, but just keep in mind that the material will stretch as well. And the other thing is, if you do end up editing the component, it will still affect the scaled one as well. It'll just be at a different proportion to the original component. And the last tip is when you're trying to scale something that is stuck next to something else, you can still do it actually. You just need to hover over where you think the handle is going to be, and it'll pop right up, and then you can scale it as needed. So those are my tips on how to use the scale tool in SketchUp, and if you'd like to learn more about SketchUp, you can check out some more of my tutorials at mastersketchup.com.